The president announced a new 50% tariff on.
Over time, we become too dependent on the United States as our biggest customer, with more than 90% of our steel exports going south of the border.
They use tariffs to take our businesses, not only steel, other businesses too.
We must rely more on Canadian steel for Canadian projects.
$900. That's the price tag on a ton of U.S. steel tonight. Just 7 days ago, it hovered around $700. This surge wasn't sparked by Wall Street's trading floor. It stemmed from a single signature on June 4th, when President Trump hiked steel and aluminum tariffs to a punishing 50%. Within hours, Canada's mills, America's primary metal supplier, halted nearly all outgoing rail shipments. Detroit's production lines felt the impact immediately. Presses stopped, robots idled, and night shift workers faced delayed paychecks. Across the border, Hamilton's blast furnaces flared back to life, illuminating the night sky like a wartime factory. Mark Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, fired back, labeling the U.S. policy a catastrophic misstep and slamming the trade gate shut. So, how did a measure intended to strengthen American industry leave Motor City scrambling for the one resource it can't function without? Why is the U.S.'s closest ally suddenly treating its steel like a strategic asset? And who will bear the cost when assembly lines grind to a halt? Ottawa, Beijing, or everyday Americans? Stick with us. The answers begin now. On June 4th, 2025, at dawn in Washington, the proclamation landed in the Federal Register before rush hour traffic clogged the Beltway. By noon, steel bound for U.S. ports carried a new 50% duty, double the 2018 rate, and steep enough to sideline mills across half the world. Within 12 hours, calls flooded from Cleveland to Monterey, all grappling with the same harsh reality. Hot rolled coil that cleared customs at Tuesday's price was a money loser by Wednesday. The futures market showed the first tremors. On June 5th, the next trading day, Nucor raised its base price to $900 per short ton, a $150 leap in just 2 weeks. For car makers, this is a slow-burning crisis. A typical pickup truck consumes about 1 ton of steel. Apply that surcharge to Ford's 1.5 million F-Series production run, and the company faces a $500 million steel bill before welding a single frame. The bigger blow, however, came from Canada. Catherine Cobden of the Canadian Steel Producers Association told the press that U.S. orders had all but disappeared, making southward sales impossible. In plain terms, the 12 million tons Canada typically exports annually vanished, starving Detroit's stamping presses. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't hesitate, calling the tariff a self-inflicted wound and hinting at export caps on critical minerals if the U.S. doesn't back down. His warning landed as Hamilton's furnaces ramped up to full capacity, chasing Asian markets, while Ford's River Rouge plant shut down 2 lines due to material shortages. Wall Street caught the news and trimmed 0.75% off the S&P 500 by the close of trading, a dip traders dubbed a Trump session teaser. The irony is stark. A protectionist barrier meant to protect U.S. jobs has, in its first week, redirected raw materials abroad, paralyzed Detroit's assembly robots, and handed Canada control over North America's supply chain. This is just the opening act. Ford CEO Jim Farley didn't need a crystal ball. On May 7, 2025, he warned that the 50% steel and aluminum tariff would slap a $2.5 billion surcharge on this year's ledger, forcing Ford to scrap its profit forecast on the spot. A month earlier, on March 4th, Reuters had already quantified the damage, estimating that tariffs could inflate prices on some Mexico-built vehicles by up to 25%, about $2,000 for a mid-size crossover. Showrooms felt the ripple by the following weekend. Dealers from San Antonio to Seattle tacked temporary surcharges on import-heavy models, while factory orders slowed to a trickle. The real pain, though, hit the job market. By April 4th, Michigan's unemployment rate climbed to 5.4%, the highest in the nation and a full point above the national average of 4.1%. Local analysts blamed one missing component, Canadian coil. Each F-150 built in Dearborn consumes a ton of steel. At $900 per ton, River Rouge racks up a six-figure steel bill every 3 minutes. Scale that to the planned 1.5 million truck run, and the cost exceeds $1.3 billion before labor or paint. Capitol Hill took note. On July 21st, a bipartisan group of Great Lakes senators traveled to Ottawa, urging Prime Minister Mark Carney to ease what they called a metal embargo. Carney responded with talk of export quotas that would keep even more steel in Canada. The reality is grim. A tariff designed to protect U.S. industry is choking Detroit's access to essential alloys, giving Canada the upper hand in the supply chain and putting American workers on layoff notice. If the tariff wall doesn't come down soon, Motor City risks a repeat of the 2008 crisis, this time with no bailout in sight. Carney saw Trump's tariff as a starting gun. By dawn on July 16th, he announced a $1 billion Canadian steel modernization fund, targeting Ontario's mill belt to replace coal-fired furnaces with electric arc and hydrogen units. Less than an hour later, Ottawa tightened the import valve. Steel from non-free trade countries now faces a tariff rate quota slashed in half. Once the 2024 tonnage limit is reached, a 50% duty hits like a steel gate. This blocks cheap slabs from Turkey or Brazil unless buyers accept a price higher than the U.S. tariff itself. The math works because Ontario's grid, powered 93% by Niagara's hydro dams and nuclear plants, keeps Hamilton's furnaces 3 to 4 times cleaner than the global average, according to the province's IESO. This positions Canadian coil to meet Europe's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBM, which will charge for embedded carbon starting in 2026. For ArcelorMittal Dofasco, Hamilton's largest steel plant, the fund is a game-changer. They've already broken ground on a direct reduced iron unit to feed 2 electric arc furnaces, cutting emissions by about 5 million tons annually. Once natural gas prices stabilize, production costs could drop significantly. Meanwhile, Detroit is sidelined. Every ton once shipped south on CN Rail is now headed to Rotterdam or Busan, stamped CBM ready and priced at a premium U.S. automakers can't match. By the time River Rouge resumes full production, Canada's strategy may have secured its place in Europe's supply chain, leaving Detroit to foot Trump's bill with interest. The billion-dollar question: how do you compete with a neighbor that turned your tariff shock into a clean steel leap forward? Alberta isn't fighting Trump's tariffs head-on, it's sidestepping them. On July 22nd, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario signed an agreement mandating that all new oil, mineral, or infrastructure projects, pipelines, rail spurs, even service roads, use Ontario melted steel. This rule excludes U.S. pipe mills from bidding. Last year, Canada exported 6.56 million tons of steel to the U.S., including over 1 million tons of line pipe, according to the American Iron and Steel Institute. Now, that metal is reserved for Canadian projects or export routes, bypassing U.S. customs entirely. Ottawa tightened the screws further, having the quota for tube and pipe from non-free trade countries. Anything exceeding that limit faces a 50% tariff. U.S. energy contractors felt the impact instantly. Before the tariff war, America imported 40% of its oil country tubular goods, pipes critical for wells. By March 12th, Reuters reported that Canada and Mexico still supplied 16% of that pipe, but at a 15% higher cost this year. The fallout is severe. Small Texas and North Dakota drillers can't secure pipe deliveries without paying a premium. Midstream firms lose $100 million contracts as Alberta prioritizes Canadian steel. And Enbridge's Midwest crews are scavenging stockpile joints because new orders are stuck in customs limbo. Corporate America has no immediate solution. Building new domestic ERW mills takes years, and rerouting oil by rail raises insurance costs and derailment risks. Meanwhile, Alberta's treasury reaps the benefits, framing it as an energy security win. With one memo and one quota adjustment, Canada has leveraged its clean energy advantage and rerouted the region's pipeline future, leaving U.S. suppliers with empty order books while Detroit grapples with idle robots. As pipeline steel stays north, Europe prepares a carbon toll. On January 1st, 2026, The EU's CBM will charge imported steel the same carbon price as European mills, projected at $88.95 per ton, adding roughly $90 per short ton at Antwerp. Ottawa sees opportunity. On February 18, 2025, consultancy Anthesis noted that Canada's hydronuclear grid makes its steel CBM ready, outpacing higher-emission competitors. EU buyers, scanning for low-carbon steel, will see Canada's coil as green and U.S. slab as red. Trucks once bound for Michigan can now head to Rotterdam, fetching a premium while dodging Trump's tariffs. For U.S. households, the Tax Foundation estimates Trump's tariff plan will cost the average family $1,296 this year, an entire month's grocery budget. Detroit's executives face a dilemma: pay Europe's carbon toll and lose price wars, or stick with coal-fed furnaces and face 50% duties at home. Either way, margins suffer. Brussels offers a carbon passport. Producers with emissions below the EU average pay nothing at the border. Canada's renewable-powered mills clear that threshold. America's 63% coal-fed plants don't. The supply chain follows the cheapest path. Trump's tariff fence aimed to protect U.S. jobs, but Brussels' Carbon Gate redirects them, and Carney's Canada is holding the door open. Your move: should Washington chase clean steel or keep its tariff shield and hope the world pauses? Share your thoughts below. A 50% tariff sounded like a job saver, but its blocked imports left Detroit scrounging for steel and lit up Hamilton's furnaces. Ford's losing $2.5 billion. Michigan's unemployment crown is tarnished, and Congress is still debating who started the fire while Canada rebuilds its mills with clean energy and hydrogen. If Europe's CBM launches in 2026, Canadian steel will sail into Antwerp with a carbon passport, while high-emission U.S. steel faces taxes at home and abroad. The negotiation window is still open, but the clock is ticking. Will Washington defuse this tariff bomb or double down and watch the world move on? Drop your take in the comments. Your voice could shape the next move in this global steel and tax chess match.